Hey, so my internet decided to work fine until we started streaming. And now suddenly it's telling me I have no connection. So if I sound garbled, I apologize.
Lovely.
How is it coming through? Is it coming through fine?
So far, so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so annoying. It was fine, and then all of a sudden we started streaming, and I have one bar.
The internet companies have heard us complaining too much and are conspiring against us.
It's just the most consistent thing is that my internet is not as fast as it's supposed to be. But hey, that's how it works. All right. This is going to be a podcast.
I'm right with you, as you know.
Oh, yours is worse. But yeah, this is going to be a podcast. Here's something. I always end up going back and looking at these a couple like days or weeks after we do these live episodes. And inevitably there's a comment that's like, oh man, I was going to give this a chance, but then the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes is just rambling nonsense. And I do have to say, like, that's intentional. If you are watching this, and I'm talking to you in the future right now, if you are watching this, like, man, why aren't they talking about the Saints yet? It's because we want to give people a chance to find the stream. And we also do a live mailbag, so we want people to be able to put questions in there. So if you want to fast forward to 10 minutes in, give or take, that's when we'll start to get content here. But
I guess we'll even have to have mindless Saints talk as well, too.
Yeah. I also get complaints that I never wear any Saints gear, so I wore a Saints shirt today.
Represent.
I went out of my way to get it. So hopefully, I don't remember who it is. He always complains, like, I can't believe you don't wear any Saints shirts. Saints
well, shoot, a while back, I feels like at least. I don't know what episode, but you had a T-shirt giveaway, I remember.
It did. I don't even know if that guy ever got the shirt.
Mysteries of the unknown.
I think that company like went out of business. I don't know. It's weird. They just were like, we can't do this anymore. And stopped.
Hey, it lasted one episode.
They also sent me a Steelers shirt. So I actually have a Steelers shirt because they accidentally sent that instead of a Saints shirt. Ironically, the week that they were playing the Saints. Anyway, good stuff.
Yeah, that was another nightmare of a game for last season for sure.
Oh, they're all nightmares.
There were a few golden spots, but yeah, more nightmares than not.
All right. Good news. Jerry's here,
but
as he always is. Pam says she can hear me fine, so we should be good. I'm a little slow today. I don't have a ton of energy today. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about today. I got enough sleep. I'm just feeling a little meh. You know what I mean? You ever had one of those days?
Pretty much all the time.
Yeah. Okay. There you
go. That's why I feel like I fuel myself constantly on coffee.
I don't know what this means. I'm not a Jets fan. I am just a reporter, I guess, if that's what you want. I covered the team. I think he's the one who always asks if I could wear Saints gear, so I'm going to do that. But all right, yeah, we're going to get into this episode here in a minute. We are going to talk about Germany and the Saints potentially playing in Germany. We're going to talk about where that report came from and whatnot. I also did kind of a deep dive, or as deep as I'm willing to go, on the UDFA class. I'm not going to sit here and break down exhaustively all the tape like I might for the draft picks down the road, because who knows? I mean, they'll be lucky if one of them even makes the roster. So we'll kind of save a lot of that for minicamp. But I did get a good bit of information. I watched some tape on all of them to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. So we'll talk about that too. And we also have a bunch of jersey numbers. So I want to bring that in because this is probably the most change I can recall in a while in terms of players that not wearing those numbers anymore. So we're getting to that.
Yeah, definitely. With some departure, some digits got freed up, obviously.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Fun fact, South Carolina State is SCSU, and so is Southern Connecticut State University, which is where I went to college. And whenever I used to Google SCSU, neither of those were the first option because according to Google, the official SCSU is St. Cloud State University. I think it's in Minnesota. One other thing, and we'll get into this on the podcast too, but Rachel did say that she appreciated the Draft Fest episode. I thought that episode came out really nicely. It trimmed down well into the podcast format. Like I probably took like 25 minutes out of it in terms of like just throwing to ads and a bunch of other stuff. But one thing we talked about was Cy. Oh, what's his name? Cy, the UDFA. Gosh, I want to say
Barnett?
more, but it's not more.
From Davenport?
Cy Barnett from Davenport. Davenport is not in New Haven, Connecticut. There is like a residential college called Davenport, but it's actually in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And that was something we talked about in the Draft Fest episode that was incorrect. And so I wanted to get to that while I was thinking about it.
Good one on that, because I couldn't even. I've heard of Davenport, Connecticut, obviously growing up in Jersey.
I don't think there is a Davenport, Connecticut. I don't think it's a town. No.
I'm thinking of Danbury.
Danbury is definitely a town.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, Brian, I grew up in Connecticut, so I grew up a Giants fan. I didn't grow up a Saints fan in Connecticut, but I will tell you, I watch a whole lot more Saints football than I do Giants football these days. Like, to me, the Giants now are just like, I need a team that I can just go to a bar and drink and watch football and yell at the TV, and that's what they are for me. But I don't get to watch it very, very often because I'm watching Saints games every weekend and they're playing at the same time. And I am not one of those people that can go back and watch a 3-hour football game that I recorded. I've never been that type of person. I'll watch the recaps. Like I'll watch like the 25-minute like trimmed down version, but that's it.
I'm the same way. It's like I can't watch a whole game. I'll go back and watch, the extended highlights kind of thing, and I won't flip out either going, "Oh, don't tell me the score. I don't want to know what happened."
Well, for a while, I mean, especially if it's the Giants too, because this year was a little different, but normally it's like I'm sure they lost. Let's just go through it. Anyway, all right. So let's start getting into this. Steve, do you want to kick off the actual podcast episode?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Welcome inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak, and we are post-draft gearing up for Saints rookie mini camp. Still lots of happenings going on with this team. Everything from rumors about playing overseas again this season, and then want to also break down some of the undrafted rookie free agents before we get into also a live mailbag segment. But it was kind of interesting to see this report started coming out, I guess, this morning, and I really still not sure how to take it because a lot of the local media, I don't feel like has grabbed onto it.
Yeah, so we're going to get into that, and as you mentioned, I did a deep dive on the UDFA class, or again, as deep as I'm willing to go into it. We are also live on YouTube right now. It's one of the first live shows we've done in a while, so we're going to do that. But I did want to do a mailbag since we haven't done one since the draft, and I do want to field a lot of questions and comments and whatnot on the draft class and the UDFAs. So that's going to be in the second segment. We're going to get into the UDFAs. The final segment will be the mailbag. So if you have questions, comments, throw them in the feed now, wherever you're watching. Well, I guess it's only YouTube because we're only live on YouTube. Throw it in the comments there, and we'll get to as many as we can. But yeah, getting back to it, the Saints and the Patriots are reportedly going to be one of the two games in Frankfurt, Germany in the 2023 season. Now, it's still, the reporting is still a little sketchy. We have not had anything confirmed stateside as to whether this is legit or not, but there is a newspaper in Germany. I think it's called the Bind newspaper, and I had to translate it from German to understand what they were saying. And so, Google Translate is not always reliable, but they do get the names right. And they're saying the Saints and the Patriots, which we already knew the Patriots were going to be one of the teams, and then the Bears and the Chiefs will be the other game. Now, this will be the second year that the NFL did international games in Germany. And so, yeah, it feels unusual because you don't usually see teams get back-to-back seasons with international games. But, it doesn't surprise me at all that this news is coming out now and that the German side of the equation has it a little earlier than we do. And so I'm going forward on the assumption that is correct, and the Saints will be in Germany at some point next season.
Yeah, like you said, it's a little odd to find out, oh, the Saints played in London last season. They're going to be going overseas again this year to Germany. I think the positive I'll take from it is at least it's not a home game that's being taken away from the Saints this year.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing is the Saints had 9 road games.
Right.
And I think that they would want to pick a team that had the extra road game to take that German game, because that way they don't lose one of their 8 home games, which would be unfair. So that's something. And I do think it is also a little more complicated because it has to be one of the Patriots' opponents, right? Like, it's not like they have the entire league to choose from. They have the Patriots' opponents to pick from. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's also going to be interesting to see when it is, what point of the season, because as you remember last year, the Saints could have theoretically taken a bye after the Vikings game in London, but they chose not to, and they chose to have a later bye. So they had to kind of navigate that in season, which didn't end up hurting them, really, because they came back and beat the Seahawks. But it still meant that you had a London trip and then 13 weeks of football before you got a week off. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that this time around. If you go back to last season, it was the Seahawks and the Bucks playing in week 10. They both had a week 11 bye, but you won't convince me that it did not affect them over the next several weeks, because you look at the Bucks, they won that game. They come back and they lose 3 of their next 4 games. They lose to the Browns, the 49ers, and the Bengals. And then the win was against the Saints, a game that they played like crap and should have lost, right? So you could argue that they probably should have lost 4 games in a row after coming back from Germany. The Seahawks, they lose to the Bucks. Then they lose 4 of their next 5 games. Their only win was over the Rams. They lost to the Raiders, the Panthers, the 49ers, and the Chiefs. So those last 2 are good teams, but those first 2 aren't. So they lost 5 of 6 games if you include that Germany game. So, the Seahawks, they were in really good position and they almost missed the playoffs because of that late season kind of swoon. The Bucks, same situation. They should have missed the playoffs if the Saints didn't blow that game that they really should not have blown. So, you're going to have to watch. It's something that you have to consider in terms of the travel, in terms of the time difference, how you manage it, especially late in the season when those games feel like they're a lot more important. So that's going to be something to keep in mind if it's a game you have to play in like November.
Something also remember as well, the Saints going to London, they went out the whole week early. After that Carolina Panthers game, they immediately flew out to London, whereas their opponent, Minnesota, waited till like the day before. Oh, what do you know? They showed up and they ended up winning.
Yeah, the Saints decided to acclimate to the time difference. The Vikings decided not to. And it's an interesting difference of strategy, right? The Vikings essentially went there and played what would have been a 9 a.m. local time game. Like, they were still on that sleep schedule. So it's like they just had a morning game, whereas the Saints played it as if it was an afternoon game. And again, it didn't hurt them because they came back and beat the Seahawks the next week. But I do think that if you see how the Vikings did and they look good in that game, I think some other teams might adopt that strategy. Whereas, like, you might lose 1 week, but you don't want to lose 2 weeks because of what you did in the week you lost, right? So that's something. It's either way. Like, we'll probably find out here in the next day or so. I'd imagine that's usually how the schedule release comes out. Maybe Monday in terms of the international schedule, and then the full schedule is supposed to be released on the 11th, which would be a week from today. So we're gonna find out one way or another whether this is accurate or not. But it's gonna be not only interesting to see whether it's there. It's gonna be interesting to see what week it is, where the bye week is. It definitely makes the schedule release a lot more newsworthy than it is already, because that could completely change the second half of their season.
Yeah, and for sure, like you're saying, the schedule release is a week away. And last season, at least, we had the international games. We knew who was playing and who their opponent was going to be. Assuming maybe the league comes out with that information, comes out before the schedule release. Because right now, we just don't know for sure from the NFL.
They will, and it's just a matter of time. But like that's why it would make sense that the German side of this equation gets it first, right? And they're a
Sure,
little,
right.
and I'm sure they're more looser with the information than they probably be on this side because they don't care. What do they care about the NFL? But that game was, if you watch that game, the Seattle Tampa game, that crowd was hot. That crowd stayed like 45 minutes afterward and was belting out John Denver. You
Nice.
could hear it on the post game. They're like, "Take me home, the country roads." It was like, why are they singing that in Germany in the first place? But they, it was a great crowd, and so I understand why the NFL wants to go back, right? Like they're making a lot of money and they're expanding their brand. I get it, but you have like when you're the team that's there, like all of a sudden you're on a 5 out of 6 game losing streak. You're like, man, I didn't really want to go to Germany midseason. Anyway, I think
Well,
that's all I have on that.
the one thing at the London Stadium last year, the Ted Lasso cast was in the stadium,
Yep.
and a big sing along of Sweet Caroline broke out, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, well, they treat it like a soccer game, right? Like
Yeah,
it's that
exactly,
type of
right.
energy in the crowd, and you don't, you lose perspective on the difference in types of like how the crowd operates. But like NFL, it's a lot of start stop. You know when to get excited, when not to. They were just at a 10 the entire time, which is just kind of fun. The turf also sucked. Everyone was slipping and sliding. So that's another thing. But all right, let's move on to one other thing that we didn't mention. The Saints are projected to get 2 4th-round comp picks and a 6th-round comp pick next season. And so
What a different time, huh?
yeah, well, and you see the Saints kind of sending out draft picks this season. They traded a 2024 4th to move up and get Jake Haener. And, I think you're looking at that and saying, well, we have one coming in, so we don't mind spending one here. And so the comp picks, technically, the ones who you're coming in, one is for Onyemata, one is for Davenport, and one is for Ellis. That's the later round one. And then Colin Saunders offset Andy Dalton, I believe, and then Nathan Shepard offset another one, which would have been a 6th rounder. So, that's a pretty good haul for losing some free agents there.
And obviously, these are projected, right? This isn't anything set in stone. Onyemata could have a bust out, campaign, and the Saints could get an elevated pick out of that, not just the 4th, huh? Or is that pretty much set?
I think it's not really about performance. It's more
Okay.
about the amount they signed for.
I got you.
And like they're not set in stone, but the methodology
Formula,
used
right.
is pretty standard. Like I would be stunned if these were not accurate.
Okay.
But they will not be announced officially until a week before the draft. I do need to look up. I'm not sure how you organize them in terms of who gets the first comp pick versus the last comp pick. I don't know how that order is generated. It might be just draft order, but I'd have to look that up. But either way, Saints went a long time without getting comp picks.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of have to think. I mean, the Falcons are responsible for giving the Saints several draft picks when you think about it. Like they gave the Saints 2 3rd-round picks when they hired Terry Fontenot, because that's kind of the deal. And in terms of the minority hiring initiatives. So like they really wanted Terry Fontenot, and the Saints, benefited from that. And then this year they got 2 more. 2 more 4th-rounders. So the Falcons over the last 4 seasons or so have been responsible for the Saints getting 2 extra 3rds and 2 extra 4ths, which is kind of funny.
You mean Terry Fontenot, our secret sleeper spy sent to Atlanta to destroy them once and for all?
To steal all the Saints free agents? Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so that's going to be something to keep in mind for next year. One more thing I want to get to this segment before we move on to the UDFAs. Jersey numbers. We got the jersey numbers for the rookies. We got some jersey number changes. So I'm just going to go through them here in terms of the draft picks. You got Brian Brzee is going to wear number 90. Kendre Miller is going to wear number 25, the Reggie Bush number. Nick Saldiveri is going to wear 64, which is just a standard offensive line number. Jake Haener is going to take over the Andy Dalton 14. A.T. Perry is going to wear 17 as Steve goes and tries to rip the Reggie Bush jersey off the wall. But go ahead.
I was going to say, I've already got my Kendre Miller jersey in hand.
He's going to put tape over it. And then the interesting one to me, the most interesting rookie number is Isaiah Foskey going to wear 55.
Yeah.
Which it's not a typical defensive lineman number. More like a linebacker number. But yeah, so that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely cool to see that number 25 in use again. I'm trying to think the last person that had it.
Daniel Sorensen.
Oh, okay. There
Yeah.
you go. Boom. But yeah, was definitely curious to see, what some of these Saints players will be wearing. And yeah, did you mention Alontae Taylor too, or no?
No, I was going to get into that. So there's a couple
Okay.
number changes.
Yeah.
Arnold Passanio is going for, he was 94. Oh no, he was 90 last year. He's changing to 92, which was Marcus Davenport's number.
Okay.
And then Alontae Taylor is going from 27 to 1, which is Marquez Callaway's number that he's no longer using because he's in Denver. He wore number 2 at Tennessee, so I'm sure there's some significance to the 1. Then we'll probably learn that from him in camp. But that's a significant change.
Yeah, to me, the number 1 just goes with that kind of swag he carries and rolls with. I think it's a perfect number for him. I like it.
It makes sense that he'd never wear number 1. But one of the rule changes in the NFL this year is that you can wear number 0. For the first time, someone can wear 0. And Ugo Amadi is going to be that guy for the Saints, a cornerback. Actually, the first guy they signed in free agency. So if you want to say something about Ugo, it's that they identified him early and wanted him and signed him. I think he was a street free agent, kind of like Derek Carr was. So yeah, he's going to be rocking the 0.
Gonna have to check out some of his numbers. Has he been a special teams guy in his career?
Yeah, from the Seahawks. Okay. I mean, nothing to write home about. Like, that's why it's surprising to me that what it means is no one was climbing over each other to get the number 0, right? Because I'm pretty sure he would have been low on that totem pole of requests. I don't think he was beating anybody out. But yeah. So the other numbers that I'll mention: Colin Saunders is going to wear 99, which is the Shai Tuttle number. Nathan Shepard's going to wear 93, which is David Onyemata number. Jamal Williams is going to wear 30, which is the same number he wore with the Lions. And Brian Edwards gets the Tommy Lee Lewis number 11. Just don't throw to him in that one corner of the end zone where the refs don't have agreed to not call any penalties.
Yeah, it's like the Twilight Zone over there. Things don't happen. It's out of sight, out of mind. I don't know.
Yeah, but he's a bigger guy, so maybe he could hold on to the ball if he does get blown up. But yeah, so those are all the jersey changes. There's also the UDFAs have numbers, but again, I'm not going to go through them because there's too many, and a majority of them won't be wearing them by the time the season starts. So that's where I'll cut it off there.
Yeah, and I saw the NFL sent out dates about OTAs, rookie mini camps, and all, but I feel like we had the dates for everything already. I was kind of wondering why they had circled around and put that back out again.
I don't know. Yeah. All I know right now is the rookie mini camp is May 12th through the 14th. And once we're through that, I will start worrying about everything else. But for now, I am
coming.
Yeah. That's the only way that I've found I can survive the NFL news cycle is, okay, what's next? Get through that. What's next? Get through that. So right now it's, okay, schedule release, get through that. Mini camp, get through that. Whatever else.
You sound like an NFL coach. One thing at a time.
Yeah, one foot in front of the other. Oh, man. Anyway, all right. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, just excited for the schedule release. I know it doesn't seem like that huge of a deal because we know who the opponents are, but for some reason it is an exciting event just because you find out, I think, too, how many primetime games are on the slate.
Yeah, that is a good question. And there'll be something to watch because last year they had what, 2? I think they had 2 Monday night games. I don't think they played on Sunday night at all. So like they were clearly not a media network darling last year because the networks have some say in how many primetime games you get, right? Maybe that changes with Derek Carr. Who knows?
I hope we're in that 3-4 range at least.
But I hate night games. I hate them.
I love the thought of them, but yeah, staying up and having to work them kind of stinks.
Yeah, like I don't want to sit around all day and wait for the game to start, right? I want the game to happen, and then I can spend the rest of the day. I don't mind Monday games.
Yeah,
actually, because it's at least like one day where it's the only thing going on.
Exactly.
I hate Sunday night games because I still want to watch football all day, and then by the time the game starts, I'm exhausted already.
No, right. And as you know all too well, we still have pregame duties, and then in-game duties and post-game duties. So yeah, there's still no, like, you get to watch any other kind of football, really.
Yeah. Luis says, Coach Nowak is, no, that's my father, actually. All right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back. We're going to dive in on some of these UDFAs. And then a live mailbag. So get your comments and questions in. Keep it locked on Inside Black and Gold. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Thanks, everyone who is watching, hanging out, asking questions, telling me that I am a Jets fan, even though I'm not. I appreciate everyone.
Yeah, that's a pretty big insult to a Giants fan.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The Jets would love to have me. The Jets, this is completely off random. But do you think Aaron Rodgers is having a culture shock because, like, no one cares about the Jets? Like, he came from the Packers, where it's like the only well, what else is there in Green Bay, right? Like,
Nothing.
It's like where I grew up in Connecticut. UConn men's basketball is the only thing in that entire area. So it's like they're celebrities. I mean, he's barely. Like, I'm not even sure the Jets are the biggest team in that area. Like, they don't even play in the city. And then you have, the Rangers in the playoffs, and I think they lost. And then you have the Knicks in the playoffs, and they're definitely bigger. And then the Nets obviously are not in the playoffs anymore. But, like, there's a lot of competing interest there.
I was just blown away too. Suddenly, America remembered again how gorgeous Jessica Alba was, because it seemed like they had forgotten, but she popped up at the Knicks game sitting next to Rodgers and Sauce Gardner, and all of a sudden she was making her way through social media, being talked about as well. And I'm like, Jessica Alba's been hot, so I don't understand.
Say I'm on Fantastic Four Jessica Alba.
I'm more of a honey Jessica Alba.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. We're going to go through the UDFAs, and there are 13 of them. So rather than list them all, I'm going to ask Steve, what UDFA are you the most intrigued to see at rookie mini camp next week?
Can I cheat and give you two?
I'm sorry?
Can I cheat and give you two?
Sure.
Number one, obviously, I think is going to be Tulane linebacker Nick Anderson, because of the local ties pulling for him. And then the other one, a huge position of need, Central Michigan tight end Joel Wilson.
Our newest member of New Orleans Saint, Nick Anderson. Nick, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Most definitely. Thank you for having me.
Nick, before we get into football, I got to ask you something. Somebody told me this, so I want to confirm it. Is your grandfather the mayor in Vicksburg, Mississippi?
Yes, sir, he is.
Okay. Well, somebody told me that this morning. That, man, they texted me, hey, Mike, you got to ask Nick, because his grandfather is the mayor here in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So I'm glad that was a confirmation on that.
All right. That wasn't the clip I thought it was, but that was one of my notes on Nick Anderson. His grandfather is the mayor of Vicksburg, Mississippi. So if you're ever in Vicksburg, make sure to say hi. But no, Nick Anderson's intriguing. And, not only because he went to Tulane, because he's very undersized at the linebacker position. He's only about 5'9". And what you wonder about Nick is if it makes more sense to play like a Landon Collins and maybe lean out a little bit, focus on coverage, and be like a big nickel. To me, that is more his role. And obviously he's had, I wrote it down here, 776 special team snaps in college. So if you're looking for a way for him to make the roster, that's going to be it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's obviously a pathway for a lot of young guys, especially the UDFAs. But it helps, obviously, when you have that know-how and experience coming in, and they're just not throwing you to the wolves, even on special teams, just for the first time coming into, like, to Saints camp kind of deal.
Definitely. The NFL is definitely a passing league. And that's something that I feel like I am prepared for and have been, working to fine-tune. Tulane did a great job, being up under Coach Mike Muth and Coach Chris Hampton. We ran a lot of different schemes, a lot of different coverages from quarters to cover 3 spot dropping to cover 3 match. So I have a very, very great intelligence and awareness for different zone concepts and man concepts. A lot of times me and Dorian will have to cover tight ends, even cover slots in certain defenses and running backs out the backfield. So I definitely have an experience of doing that and have production of doing that as well with pass deflection. So I have been working on my hands so I can turn those, pass deflections into interceptions going.
Yeah. So, again, if you're Nick Anderson, you're trying to make this team, you do it first on special teams, and then I think you do it second in coverage. You are going to have to be an elite cover linebacker to make an NFL roster at 5'9". You're just not going to be able to be a run support player. It's just not going to happen. You're going to get stuck on blocks because, you got to be quick. You got to get around them. You're not going to beat them. And so that's going to be something for him that I think is important. The other guy you mentioned is Joel Wilson. He is intriguing. He is definitely not a blocking tight end. So I think the Saints are still going to be in the market for a just solid blocking tight end, right? Like a Josh Hill. You need one of those on the roster, like a Nick Vannett. They don't have one right now. Juwan Johnson, I think, is a good receiving tight end. He's not a great blocking tight end. And you don't want to have him spending all of his energy in line blocking. You want someone who's just good at it, right? Like JP Holtz is a guy who you look at, maybe Taysom as a blocker. But that's going to be something because that is not the strongest part of his game. He's 6'3", 242, right? That's not elite size at the linebacker or at the tight end position. He has good balance. He gets into the open field and you can see it. He's quick, a little stiff. He had 44 catches, 445 yards, 6 touchdowns last season. He was also productive in 2022, 31 catches, 367 yards, and another 6 touchdowns. This is a theme that you see a lot with Saints players in general, is they all played quarterback in high school. And that was true to Joel Wilson as well. He threw for 11 touchdowns as a senior in high school, ran for 450 yards and 7 more touchdowns. He also played linebacker on the defensive side of the ball. So when you look at the Saints UDFAs, it's always, okay, we want elite traits in at least one category. And in this case, he is a pass-catching tight end, very athletic, able to get downfield. He kind of looks like Troutman. If you want to have an example, he kind of plays that way, where the athleticism kind of catches you by surprise. I don't know if they'll be able to use it, just like they were unable to use Troutman. But he's going to be someone that's interesting to watch too.
Yeah, you mentioning that, this is more of a pass-catching tight end. I'm curious to see, though, still, what are they going to do about that inline guy that, stays in to block? Is there somewhere you're going to have to bring in a free agent, or do you have to do a trade with someone?
What's his name? Forrestall?
Yes.
Maybe that's him.
Miller.
I don't know. Miller Forrestall?
Miller Forrestall. I know he's a big dude.
I know nothing about him. So maybe he's a good blocker. We'll find out.
Right.
There are a few other interesting names on this list. The guy who stands out probably the most on the defensive side is Anthony Orji, the guy out of Vanderbilt, who that is how you say his name. He's, we talk about plus athletes. You're looking for something that sets you apart, and that's him, right? He ran a 4.5 340 for a linebacker. That's really good. 38.5-inch vertical leap, 10.2 broad jump. He's 6'1", 230, 32-inch arms. Another team captain that you see all the time is team captain, Senior Bowl players, 4-year starter, that sort of thing. He's aggressive. He's always around the ball. He misses a lot of tackles. And that's what you're going to look for with him, is can he kind of play with that head on fire energy and not make mistakes? Because that's where you kind of have to find that balance. You can't be missing tackles because you're trying to be aggressive and get upfield. But it is why, he was very highly productive. He led the SEC last year. He averaged 9 tackles per game. He has led Vanderbilt in tackles for the last 3 seasons. He started 32 consecutive games. So, it's a guy with a lot of experience. He's going to be flying around the field. Another guy who I think you're going to have to make your initial impact on special teams. But, when you can get a linebacker who, he was projected as a 6th round pick by some people. So you're getting a good value here. When you can get a linebacker with the prototypical size and strength and athleticism you need at that position as a UDFA, I think that's where if you're the Saints, you jump all over it.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously the versatility of having some special teams work. Anything with him at like even playing strong safety at all?
No, he's too big. It's 6'2",
Okay.
230. You're a linebacker. That's the difference between 6'2", 230 and 5'9", 230 is, you can project a little differently. He needs to be, he is a run linebacker, right? Like he is a run support linebacker. And the issue for him is a lot of times getting upfield too quickly and getting out and overrunning a play. And that's what you got to fix with him. On the offensive side of the ball, there are a couple really interesting players. We talked about Malik Flowers in the last episode, so we don't need to do that again, but he's obviously the return specialist. It's always fun to watch. Cy Barnett, who we talked about before we came on, wide receiver / punter / kicker out of Davenport College in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's another fascinating guy. He's 6 foot 190, 4.38 40-inch vertical leap, 10 feet 11 inches on the broad jump. He's also, as I mentioned, a kicker and a punter. He once punted an 87-yard punt. That is his long. 53 catches, 694 yards, 4 touchdowns. D2, which is Davenport's a D2 school. You don't see a lot of Division II football players, but it is not unheard of, right? I think Danny Woodhead might be the best example of, a D2 skill position player latching on. Joe Andruzzi, who's a Southern Connecticut State University alum, that's another D2 school, that the one I went to. He was a good offensive lineman for a while. So, he's a guy who's going to just try to wow people with athleticism. And it's going to be interesting because he doesn't look like a particularly athletic guy. One of the things he said that I picked up was he shattered his fibula and tore his ankle ligaments in early 2020, which was like right before the pandemic started. And one of the reasons he was never able to kind of get above Davenport, like I'm sure he would have liked to transfer to an FCS program or just to kind of, raise that profile. But it took him so long to recover from that he was kind of stuck. And it wasn't really until this last season that he was back feeling like himself. So, he's going to be one. I don't know if they're going to work him as a wide receiver or if they're going to put him in the punter competition. I really don't. But anytime you can say that about a player, it's kind of fascinating.
We have a big breaking news on the tight end front.
Oh, God. They signed somebody?
Not the Saints, but a former Saint is off the market and not going to be returning to New Orleans. Also was with the Jaguars. Dan Arnold reached an agreement with the Philadelphia Eagles. Not that blocking tight end anyway that this team needs right now.
Yeah. He wouldn't have been that. No,
definitely not.
He's not that. All right, going forward. So Roderick, what happened? I had it and I lost it.
Thompson.
So Roderick Thompson, running back out of Texas Tech. He reminds me a little bit of a Kendry Miller in terms of this is another just one cut downhill runner. The problem with Sir Roderick is he doesn't seem to know that about himself. He has a really good skill set. He's just a power runner. He's got speed. When he hits the hole with conviction, he's gone. Like you go watch his highlight tape and you'll see run after run after run where he gets to the hole and then he's just by everybody because he's got the speed, he's got the power. The problem is he's constantly dancing around. So if they can kind of train that out of him, I think you have a chance for a decent running back. The guy I'd comp him to, generally speaking, would be like an Ahmad Bradshaw, kid out of Marshall, 7th round pick a long time ago. Maybe 2008, 2009. He has that type of skill set, but again, it's like you just got to learn how to use it. He can also catch the ball, so he's someone interesting to watch. And then one more that I'll mention is Shaquem Davis, wide receiver out of South Carolina State. Now, this kid is 6'5", 217. He is bigger than their tight ends. At least size-wise, not weight-wise. The issue is, again, he doesn't play like it. Yeah, it's like you can see the skill set, but he doesn't high point the ball. Like you watch his highlights, and it's tough because you can't really find a ton of tape from South Carolina State football. It just doesn't exist. They're not on major networks. But when you watch it, he's just constantly creating big plays. But the big plays are he's going downfield and he's kind of he's trying to get the defender in trail, and he does, and he kind of walls them off, and he tries to like over the shoulder catch the ball, and he does, and he has an 87-yard touchdown, right? Like that's his longest play was an 87-yard touchdown. The problem is you're not going to be able to get NFL defensive backs in trail unless you have 4.3 speed and just have that. So what's going to end up happening is they're going to be, in his hip pocket. And then if he tries to go up and catch the ball like that, the defender is going to put his foot in the ground and high point the ball, and it's going to be an interception. So I need to see him in camp understanding how to play as a 6'5" receiver. And it's what I also need to see out of A.T. Perry. The Saints need someone who can fill that role. And I think he has the skill set. I mean, it's 45 catches, 934 yards, and 11 touchdowns last season. He had catches of 87, 58, 57, 44, 37, 35, 32 yards. He's a big play machine. Just needs to know how to use that body of his, because you can't teach 6'5". So he's another one who's going to stand above the crowd. But those are the most intriguing players to me. And I had someone say, what is Cy Barnett going to do for the Saints? I'm like, I don't know. Most of these players are going to get cut. I'm just telling you the ones that I'm going to have the most interest in watching when we're out there in 10 days or so.
I was trying to think last year how many UDFAs made the team, and obviously Shaheed's the one that stands out to me. I can't really.
Yeah, Nephi Sewell, right?
There you go.
And I consider getting on the practice squad as making the team.
I agree. Me too.
Yeah, I mean, you can get cut as a UDFA, but if you get brought back, that's a win. Like Dejon Dixon, everyone was talking about Dejon Dixon. He didn't make practice squad
Right.
last year. Kirk Merritt did, right? So, it's going to be 4 or 5, maybe 6 practice squad spots that are dedicated to these guys, and you're going to have some veterans in those spots. But the nice thing about, the NFL rule changes over the last few years is if you're on the practice squad, you can get into 3 NFL games without even being signed to the active roster. So it's just going to give you a chance to contribute. And, I think a majority of the players on the Saints practice squad got called up at least once or twice throughout the season. Those are typically going to go to like the Chris Harrises and the Kevin Whites because you trust them a little more in the special teams parts of the game. But either way, that's where it's rare to see a player catch on as a UDFA and make the roster out of camp. I think Deontay Hardy might be one of the few examples of that. Marquez Callaway too, I believe, was on the roster from the beginning of the season. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like out of that UDFA group, there is 1 or 2 that stick with the team. And like you said, I consider making the practice squad, making the team.
Yeah, Shai Tuttle, I believe, made it straight out of camp. Malcolm Roach made it straight out of camp. Yeah, I'm sure there are others. I'd have to go back and find a list. But yeah, I mean,
Juwan, huh?
I think, yeah, I guess so. I guess Juwan and Tony Jones Jr. would have also been on that list. Yeah, so I mean, the Saints love the UDFAs. It's not unusual to see them make an impact, but you got to really stand out in some way. Andrew Dowell wasn't a UDFA from the Saints. I think he was picked, or he was a UDFA somewhere else and then latched on with the Saints.
Yeah, I don't know why Cowboys stands out, but that could be wrong.
I think it might have been. He was another team, and then he kind of ended up on, like, he washed out and ended up on the Saints, and they really liked him. But yeah, I mean, that's where this starts. That's kind of the, we can get really excited about the rookies and whatnot and all the action in the preseason. One of the more exciting things is watching the UDFAs because they're playing for their jobs. Like Isaiah Foskey doesn't have to worry about missing the roster. He's making the roster. He's just trying to get better and better. Like Cy Barnett, this is his Super Bowl, right? And that's kind of fun.
Right. And then obviously, you hear it all the time. What you put on tape, it sticks because other teams will come a calling kind of deal. Yeah. I just don't know really how. I mean, other squads aren't getting OTA and training camp footage of these guys, huh?
I'm not sure if that's shared around.
Right. I don't think so.
I mean, the Saints make sure to only let you record individual sessions. So if that's all they're getting, who knows? But like the Saints ended up with Taysom Hill off the Packers waivers, right? Like it happens.
Well, that's a great story though, because they were scouting somebody else and then ended up seeing him in their footage or whatever. So that's pretty amusing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's why teams are typically fine to say, yeah, we'll cut this guy and stash him on the practice squad because it's rare to see a player to see a team invest in a player just off the scrap heap without knowing anything about them. The Saints tried to do it last year with Tanner Owen, and he ended up having a heart condition, and he got waived with an injury exemption, right? Ian Book went to the Eagles last year. So it does happen. Just not, I would qualify it as rare. But I think that's why the Saints hit Rashid Shaheed last year until the last possible moment. And then you get him on the field, and you can understand why. I will say, so the last note I'll make is Malik Flowers. He's not the same. Like, you talk about return specialist, and he tied Rashid Shaheed's record at the FCS level. He was Montana. Rashid Shaheed was Weber State, which they play against each other. It's the same level. And I think the Saints are kind of in the mode where they want to just bring in a return specialist every year because they're good at it. He's a much different type of returner than Rashid Shaheed, where you see Rashid running and he's like gliding. Like, you would never know he was running fast, but he is. Whereas Malik is more like a running back, I would say, than a true kind of galloper, right? He's running hard. Like, you can tell he's running hard. He's going real fast, but it's not smooth like you would see with Rashid. But he can break a tackle with the best of them, and I think that's what Rashid doesn't necessarily have. He's not running through arm tackles as much as that's what Malik is going to do. So he's going to be fun he's fun to watch. I don't know how effective he'll be at the NFL level, where the angles that players take don't have to be as good, and you're not outrunning everybody the way he was at the FCS level. But he's gonna be fun to watch in the preseason at the very least.
And I'm still interested to see what Shaheed can do in the return game, because I think we saw him struggle more with that than as a receiver last year. There were like 2 or 3 instances where the turf monster got him.
Yeah, he didn't break anything. And that's what you want to see. Like, it's tough to make a huge impact at returner. Like, if Devin Hester was coming into the NFL right now, you would be like, where are you going to play, man? Like, you're a cornerback who can't play corner. You're a wide receiver who can't play wide receiver. Like, are we going to keep you on the roster just to do this? Because It's hard to justify a roster spot. Whereas he's like, because he came in the NFL at the time he came into the NFL, he's one of the greatest players in NFL history, right? Just because he was that big of an impact. I think Cordell Patterson tied his record, which is honestly kind of amazing, because this is when Cordero plays. It's like he either scores a touchdown or nothing. But it's I think you really want to see Rashid as a receiver. And if that costs him opportunities in return games, so be it. I would be very upset if it went the other way. If they were limiting his action as a wide receiver because they wanted to make sure he had energy to be a returner. Because in today's NFL, just not turning it over is about the best you can hope for in a lot of instances. And
obviously with the new undrafted rookie too, it's like nothing's for sure, nothing's given. We don't know how he's going to fit in, and he might not be trusted enough to be that return man, especially early on. It takes a while for them to really trust guys in handling the ball.
I mean, Rashid wasn't on the roster until week 5.
Right,
6,
exactly, right.
6, right. So like he didn't exactly get a glowing endorsement out of camp either. Deontay was. And it was mostly because at that point they didn't really have a return specialist. They'll do it.
Is he the last one to return a kick for a touchdown? Because I can't think of anybody else.
I think so. I think the last kick return for a touchdown was the punt he returned against Seattle.
Seattle, right? Yeah, that's all I remember.
Taysom had a long return. I think he got taken down at like the 55. Kamara had a return for a touchdown. So wasn't.
Who was that one against? Because I remember it was kind of like a stutter step, and it was like, no, stop, stay in the end zone. And then he kept going. It was like, oh no, yeah, keep going.
I don't remember who it was against, but I know it was in 2017 because it was his rookie season. Because there's no way in hell Kamara is going to return kicks ever, like in the last 4 years. But yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I remember that whole like kind of stutter move, and it was like, should I go? Shouldn't I? And you were kind of like, no, 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 and then saying yes, yes, yes.
Right. One other note is Lou Hedley. I'm not even going to go into it. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, feel free. Google him. You'll be looking for a while. Fascinating guy. Full body tattoos. He wears number 94. Wore number 94 in college at Miami. That's because he idolized The Rock, who played at Miami. I mentioned that before. he's also kind of an Australian rules kind of rugby guy, right? So when you're watching him punt, a lot of times he'll take those like side steps to kind of create an angle, which is like always like it stresses me out whenever I see that, because I'm just waiting for someone to just like trip him up. Or I think that was what happened when the Saints against the Seahawks last year. I don't remember their kicker's name, but he's another one of those like rugby style kickers. And he ended up like losing his grip on the ball, and then he just like tried to run for it or whatever, and the Saints stopped him. That was funny. But yeah, so when you're watching him out there, you're get ready, because you're going to see a little bit of that.
The Saints seem to find some very interesting characters at punter.
Might as well. It's a boring position. Might as well make it interesting, right?
I mean, even you go back to obviously a guy like Thomas Morstead. That dude was just yoked. I mean,
They drafted him.
Right,
Yeah.
and exactly. But even the, kind of that, I don't know what kind of personality you would say with the Blake Gillikin, but he's also kind of like that rock and roller kind of mentality, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. But all right, let's wrap this segment up so we can come back and get into our live mailbag. If you haven't thrown your comments or questions in there yet, make sure to do that. I'm going to go through them all in this break and kind of star them all so that we can go through them in rapid succession. Thanks everyone who is in here. Thanks everyone who's listening. I know it's kind of a weird time on a Thursday to do a live chat, but as always, I appreciate everyone being in here. This is Inside Black and Gold. If you haven't subscribed yet, do that. If you haven't subscribed on the YouTube channel, do that. Really helps us out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a rating, leave a review. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. You can follow us on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak and at Steve Geller WWL. That's G-L-E-E. I'm sorry, that's G-E-L-L-E-R. I'm sorry, I just confused people more than it would have if I hadn't spelled it at all. But yeah, we'll be right back. This is Inside Black and Gold. And we're back. Well, actually, no. Hold on. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Make sure to hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or listening to this as a podcast. Please do that. Got a lot of positive feedback on the Cam Jordan interview that we played last episode. Try to get more player interviews whenever we can. I try to get exclusive stuff, and hopefully this year, especially rookie minicamp, we'll have a lot of access. So if y'all are interested in hearing from anyone in particular, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter, whatever. DMs are open, and I'll see what I can do. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of traffic around the Brian Brazees of the world and the Isaiah Foskeys of the world. But who are you looking forward to talking to the most at rookie minicamp, Steve?
Well, unfortunately, we don't know how much Miller will be doing because of his injury, so I don't even know if he'll be there. But just from his interactions already with the media, I would love to hear more from him. But I would say the 6th round receiver in Perry, interested to hear more from him. Just think that's someone that he kind of looks and feels like that late round steal for this team. Let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, I want to see again. And we talked about this, and I don't need to talk about it again. I just want to see him use a 6'3" frame the way a 6'3" guy should use a 6'3" frame. I feel like in college you don't necessarily have to do that, but when you're in the NFL at that height, you're there because of that height.
Right.
Anyway, so
Yeah, we don't want him, like as Bear loves to say, don't be big for nothing.
well, it's like Juwan, I think, has gotten better about it. But
Yes.
my big criticism of him over the first couple of years was he doesn't use the 6'3" frame, or he didn't use the 6'3" frame the right way. And I think he got better at that last year. And that's part of the reason you saw him be more involved in the offense. But all right, let's get into the mailbag. First off, we got Jerry. He says, what's next? Saints host a game in Japan or China or Brazil or Australia or Africa? Who knows? I'd say Mexico, maybe the next one.
Yeah, since they've done London, obviously, a couple
They've
times
done London
now.
a few times. They're going to Germany. Yeah, I mean, the question is, when does the NFL put a franchise in London? Probably would be the next one, and that would be fascinating to watch because they would have to travel overseas for 8 or 9 games, but it feels like that's where it's trending, and the money's there. And that would just drive everyone nuts.
Yeah, and I figured, obviously, when you're adding, obviously, more locations, more venues, that the likelihood of a team playing increases. I just definitely didn't expect it to be back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
I would imagine if it is the case, the NFL would have to have cleared it with the team, I think. I don't think they would just say, well, we're putting you in back-to-back overseas games, kind of thing. I would think maybe they'd ask him, maybe not, though. I could be wrong too.
I don't think they have much say in the matter, personally. But you can see the interest level, right? Like I was talking about with that Germany game in Munich last year, like the crowd was unbelievable. And if you're the NFL, you're looking at that, it's like, yeah, of course we want to keep doing these games. They have 2 games now, right? And so if they only had 1 game, the Saints probably would have gotten away with not having to go. But they, and I think when you start adding more and more games, it's just like, yeah, we got to send somebody, and we wanted to send the Patriots, and you're one of their opponents, so we're going to send you.
You've got all your passports in order.
Yeah, right. I have to get a passport now.
There you go, right?
I'll wait to see if it's official first. That's the thing. I should couch this with. This is all based on one newspaper's report, a German newspaper's report, which could be complete malarkey. It seems pretty legit. So I'm going to go off that based on that, or I'm going to go based on that, but we'll see.
We'll have to delve deep into our Germany sources.
Yeah, and as Jerry points out, the schedule is officially being released this upcoming Thursday, May 11th, 7 p.m. Central Time on ESPN2 and the NFL Network. But we will know, usually by like 2 or 3 p.m. One year, I don't even think we got the lunchtime, and we knew the entire schedule. So I'll be planning to do kind of a game-by-game prediction post, which is what I did last year. We didn't have a podcast this time last year, so I'll try to think of a good way to do that on the pod. I'm also planning on doing a 53-man roster projection probably for the next episode, just to kind of get the baseline of what we think. But yeah, it's funny because it feels slow right now, but it's gonna come fast once it starts.
Yeah, and I feel like some of those pre-schedule, dates and times and whatever, some are not correct.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to be careful, but there's, you have your pretty reliable sources that end up getting this info that you pay attention to, not your Adam Schiefters. You know what I mean? Yeah, you just got to watch out with the spelling of some names. I don't know why people get off on, trying to trick everyone.
The Adam Scheisters of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, especially now without check marks, it's like could be anybody. Like, because a lot of times you're going around, and so like Nick Underhill breaks a game on the Saints schedule, and Jeff Duncan breaks a game on the Saints schedule. And it's like, yeah, I know those names, I know those people, so I trust them. And then occasionally you'll see like, oh, a Bears reporter has broken. Right. This is when the Saints and Bears are playing. And previously I was able to go and say like, okay, this is a legitimate person. Now it's like maybe, right? Because like a lot of local team reporters have like 2,000 followers. It could be of anybody. Anyway, it's I don't need to go on another Twitter rant, but KD points out, says, I don't mind heading overseas. I just prefer we were the away team and didn't waste a game of home dome advantage. That is the case this year.
Right.
The Saints were on the road. If the Patriots Saints game is in fact that game, the Saints were on the road to face the Patriots. So that wouldn't be a home game lost. So, but they did have 9 road games versus 8 home games. So you're still getting 8 road games.
I think, I mean, that's huge for me, obviously. You never want to lose that home game, especially to me, Saints fans, because they love packing the dome.
Yeah. Brian Russell says, come on, man. I apologized. I'm just kidding. I'm not really mad. I'm just giving you a hard time. Being a Jets fan and being a Giants fan would be equally as bad over the last 6 years. Now both teams are overpaying for quarterbacks that probably aren't that good anymore. In one case, it was never good, and the other case is just old. Anyway, KD also wants to know where I grew up in Connecticut. He's from Connecticut, next to Mohegan Sun, so I think that would be like Uncasville or Montville, one of those villes. I grew up not that far from there. I grew up in Wyndham. I actually dated a girl who lived in Montville for a while. Yeah. I'm not far from Yukon, where my parents live there still. I don't live there anymore. Obviously, I live here.
As a young lad growing up in Jersey, when it was time that we could finally, head to Atlantic City to gamble, it always became, well, you take the boys to AC, but you take the girlfriend to Mohegan Sun.
Well, it was funny because I was just in Vegas, right? I got married, and it's very different from a casino perspective. Whereas Mohegan Sun, you are going to the casino and you are staying at the casino. There is nothing there. It is just the casino.
The Indian reservation, right?
But that's not walking distance. That's a drive. Whereas Vegas, you're going you stay at a hotel and you go to the casino, but there's 90 other things you could do at any given time. That's not the case at Mohegan. It's there's stuff happening in Mohegan, but you are very much, it's basically you go to a resort hotel, right? This is a resort casino, except it's in the middle of rural Connecticut where there's nothing, no beaches or anyway.
I never made it to Mohegan Sun, but like I said, grew up in Jersey. One thing I did love, their commercial, their song was awesome.
Yeah. Well, they have 6 casinos on the floor. You can go from casino floor to casino floor and you get lost. They talk about getting lost. Yeah. That's the type of place you can get lost in. Jasper, we went through this. He says, so why do the Saints have to play internationally in back-to-back seasons? It's how the cookie crumbles. Jerry points out that Nick Anderson was on the Keeping It Real Who Dat Sports podcast Wednesday night. So go check that out if you're interested in hearing from him. He was also on Sports Talk. We have I posted that interview on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, it's over on our YouTube channel, WWL Sports, which is what you're watching on right now. So I don't know why I just described that to you.
Love the fact, obviously, embracing that black and gold culture right away. And, mentioning the field mouse as someone, Sam Mills, that he looks up to is going to endear him to a lot of Saints fans for sure.
Well, so he said he looked up to Sam Mills, and I didn't believe him necessarily until he threw the field mouse nickname out there, because I was like, okay, he's done his homework. That's one of my favorite nicknames in sports is Sam Mills field mouse. Next to, I think it was Vaughn Johnson. His nickname was Meat.
Nice meat.
Not quite as catchy, but still good.
See, if he was playing today, he could get an Arby's ad.
Yeah. Brian Russell points out that it was Dallas, so you're correct for Andrew Dowell. He also says, side note, not draft related, could the Saints bring in Deion Jones as a rotational guy? Unlikely. I mean, they could bring in a lot of people at this point. I think you're not looking for veteran replacements for players that you're not sure about. Right now, you're looking at your UDFA class and you're seeing who has potential there, right? If you come away from the rookie mini camp and you're like, man, this guy just doesn't have it. Right. That's when you might start looking at guys like Deion. But I don't think the Saints. Yeah, it's tough because occasionally they'll bring in the big names, but they're rarely are they the names that end up making this roster, right? You brought in Malcolm Brown, everyone was all excited, and then he was gone in a week, right? Bringing Kiko Alonso, and everyone was like, "Oh man!" Then he retires in 2 days. So I don't know. I don't get excited for names I recognize anymore.
No, the only one that maybe it's in the tight end free agency market, Cameron Brate, somebody that was on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, could fill that blocking tight end kind of role. But other than that, I haven't really been enamored with the free agent market that's still left out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you want to go in and try to find a name on the free agency market, it's going to be at tight end.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to, even if it's just a veteran who can like mentor some of the young guys, like you want a veteran in that room. And it's weird to not have a veteran tight end in any capacity. KD says, would it be advantageous to switch our D to a 3-4 or at least multiple like in New England? I ask because last year on D, I feel like though our line was our biggest liability aside from injuries at defensive back and linebacker. No. And the reason I'll say this is because you are in what could be the final season or two of a regime / youth build. And by that, I mean, Cam Jordan is aging out. Demario Davis is aging out, right? Like Marshawn Lattimore, he's still in his prime, but he's getting to the, edge of it, right?
Matthew, Honey Badger,
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, Tyrann Mathieu. These are all players that like you want to run it back with, but you don't necessarily want to completely adjust everything with. And again, because like two of these are team leaders in DeMario and Cam, and that would be a major change for guys that have not played in that system, and the system has worked, right? And that's why you rebuilt your defensive line in the image of the old defensive line. Like you didn't change the prototypes you were going after, and and if things go off the rails and it doesn't work, then I don't think you're sticking it out with this coaching staff, right? So it doesn't make sense to really kind of force feed a change, in my opinion. Whereas, if you do end up having to make wholesale changes, then sure, you can reevaluate the entire roster and the entire defensive scheme. But I don't think you're going to do that with the coaching staff that you brought in, because you brought them in for specific reasons, and that is to work within the parameters that you've already set.
No, and as you mentioned with Dennis Allen, guy that's been around the block, he's not going to be changing his ways, and what he has done, at least for the Saints the last couple of years, it's been working.
Right. Yeah, right. The fact is the defense has been good.
Yeah.
And I think last year was a personnel issue, and obviously health is always a factor. But I think it was a personnel issue. And that's why, the Saints wanted to bring back David Onyemata, but they didn't want to bring him back at 3 years and $35 million. One of the reasons being you knew you had to revamp things on the defensive line one way or another, because he just wasn't getting it done at the level that he probably had earlier in his career. And Shai Tuttle, while solid, was never great. And that's why you're spending a first-round draft pick on a defensive tackle. And that's why everyone knew they were going to spend a first-round draft pick on a defensive tackle. So, yeah.
Yes, sadly, just a guy like, obviously, Shai Tuttle seeing go, he'll always live in Saints lore for his, taking out of Matt Ryan.
Yeah. Just Louise Lockett says, Juwan put on weight. He said he was on a seafood diet. The last time we saw him was
everything he sees.
About a month and a half ago. Yeah, it does not surprise me. I see seafood, eat food. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me. I think he is still trying to bulk up a little bit. He has never been shy about eating. I think he was up to 235 last year. I think he's going to keep trying to bump that up. But it's tough. Like there is a point where you're slow, right? Like you want to be the elite receiving tight end that he can be, and then the weight is more geared toward blocking, and you don't want it to get to a point where the weight is impacting you as a receiver, and there's the kind of balance there. But I really like Juwan. I think Juwan's going to be very good for a long time in this system.
Yeah, it's hard not to like to do. Puts in the work. You've seen this steady development, and just hoping that another year, even more greatness blossoms from him.
Yeah. Brian Russell says, who else or what position will the Saints bring in first? I'm sure they are not done with remaining cap space money. I think we've already answered that. It's tight end. You got to do something tight end.
Got to be, right.
Because, and again, it's not because you don't like Juwan Johnson. I think you really do like Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
There's just roles that you have to fill, and you don't have anyone to fill them. Unless Miller Forrestall shows up and is a revelation as a blocker, I think you're going to want to bring in somebody at a decent value.
Who was the blocker that we lost to the Giants?
Nick Vannett.
Yeah, is Vannett a free agent out there? We could bring him back.
I don't know, but either way, like that's a good example of like that type of signing is what I think the Saints are going to go after.
Right,
like not Nick Vannett this year, but Nick Vannett 3 years ago. I'm wearing just a Saints shirt actually, but
We'll definitely be getting more Inside Black and Gold swag for the season, I think.
Oh, you would know because you're the one who just randomly buys it.
We'll have a hat contest soon.
Brian Russell is busy in this chat here. Says, would hate for Brazil to be Zion Williamson and a bust. I would hate for anyone to be a bust. I don't think Brian has any reason to. I don't think there's any reason to look at Brian and say, man, the bust potential there is off the charts, other than the injury history, which that's part of the reason he was there at 29, right?
I'd hate to go into a rookie campaign thinking that, for crying out loud. I mean, how negative do you want to be?
Well, I mean, the fact is, he would not have been on the board at 29 if the injury history wasn't there, right?
Correct, right.
So you're benefiting from that, and you're hoping that it's a much ado for nothing, which you did all the scouting. Like, you had all the medical people look at him and poke and prod and bend his knee around. And like, if you had concerns, you would have, the Saints are not shy about dropping people off their board for health concerns.
One thing I was surprised, Jeff, Pete Prisco from CBS Sports NFL analyst, he's pretty rough on the Saints. I know Whodats really don't typically care for his take, but about Brazil, he said that, great value pick for the Saints, shouldn't have been there at 29. The guy's best football is ahead of him, and he even compared him to Ndamukong Suh. And I was like, whoa. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Suh was he a number 1 pick?
Overall, he might have been.
He was up toward the top. I know that.
But just to hear that, it kind of threw me back.
Other than the fact that they both play defensive tackle, I don't see, like, Ndamukong Suh was always more of a nose. Brian Brzee is not a nose. It's definitely like a 3 technique. And yeah, I guess. I don't know. Like, it's nice to hear someone's giving them props, because I think Mile Kiper gave them the worst grade that of anybody, which was still like a B-, because that's kind of it is always funny to see the scale of like who's afraid to have people get mad at them. So it's like, yo, you're really talking shit, but you're saying it's a B-.
I mean, but honestly, it's really hard to give out anything but either a B or C to me. I mean, you start getting to an A or even in the F range, it's like it's a little too far, I guess, of either way, getting 2 up or 2 down on a draft class we haven't seen anything from.
Well, Mel was also pretty critical of the 2017 draft class too. So, I think he came back and was like, "My bad," a couple years ago. But yeah, so take that with a grain of salt. The thing that does always give me, like, I always get a kick out of is, oh, this was a huge reach. This was like a 30 to 40 pick reach, and it's like, maybe, but it doesn't matter whether like your board says that. It matters, like, so do you think the Saints, if the Saints wanted this guy and they felt like he was the best player available at that point, why would they risk not getting him because they might be able to get him like 30 picks later, right? Like, they didn't pick again until 71. So sure. And then you got the running back. So it doesn't, like, it posits a reality where everyone is working off the same board, and that does not exist. And I think one of the picks that people were critical of, like, this is what's funny to me is, so we have a question here. Where is it? From Larry Connor Jr. He says, do you guys think Foskey has the potential to be the best player from this class? And it's funny when you look at like the local reaction, everyone seems to be in love with this pick. Even Bobby loves this pick. And he's been very critical of a lot of things the Saints do in the draft. And if you go nationally, everyone's like, reach.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like, what do the national pundits think the Saints need? And I don't know. Like, I don't know if there are better players on the board at that point. You're talking about 40. You're not talking about 20. And I do think Isaiah Foskey has the chance to be the best player of this draft class. But I think of it in the same way that Cam Jordan has been the best player from the 2011 draft class. Like, I think that he has a chance to be a very consistent player for a long time. And Cam never blew the doors off. He never had a 20-sack season, right? But he's always available. He's always making the right play. He's always holding up against the run. Sometimes he accidentally punches a guy in the head. You take the good with the bad. But that's why, like, when you compare Isaiah to players. Like, I'm not even comparing his play style to Cam. I'm comparing his personality and his perseverance and what he brings to the locker room. Because in that sense, they are very similar.
Though the one guy I'm definitely anxious to see more of, because I did not watch TCU football, is Miller. And some of the clips that you even posted, especially that one, if it was right after the draft or whatever, when he was just able to maintain that balance, that to me was out of sight, jaw dropping, eye popping, whatever you want to call it. And definitely anxious to see something from him. If it's come training camp, so be it. Just want to see, I think the Saints have some good luck maybe with those running backs in the third round. Who knows?
It's definitely possible. Their track record of drafting in the first round or in the top 3 rounds for running backs has been very good. They haven't taken many of them, but they've all been good. Right? We went through it in the episode, the recap episode, but it's like Deuce McAllister, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara. I think I missed one. Either way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Pammy Whammy says, I don't trust anyone with Mel Kiper here, and that includes Mel Kiper. Larry Connor says, are you guys tired of the Saints drafting a short, average arm Drew Brees clone type of quarterbacks every couple of years? I am. I mean, as long as the starter is a good player, I'm not mad about it. They can draft whatever quarterback they want. Derek Carr's going to start. Drew Brees started prior to this. And, when it was Andy Dalton, that's when I would have I would be annoyed if you brought back Andy Dalton and then took Jake Haener, a guy who might develop into a younger Andy Dalton, right? If you're going and bringing in a Derek Carr, then I'm perfectly okay with a guy like that you can kind of develop over time. But
yeah, I guess the shorter stature quarterbacks, people may be thinking that they're trying to recreate the whole Drew Brees magic. But I mean, the more you look from Haener, love the presence that he has in the pocket, the awareness, and you can't deny his accuracy as well. I'm not sure how strong of an arm he has, but I do know it's accurate.
There's Scout with Clout says, I was more critical than most, but only because of how it compares to the Eagles draft and because of cost. We actually got some good players, though. I don't buy that the Eagles draft is that good.
Well, you hear the Georgia players, and that's why you have all national champions. So
like Howie Roseman is just taking the most popular player option available. It's not. It's like it almost has nothing to do with scouting. It's like, who do the fans want? I'll take that guy.
Right?
Like
who's number one on the board on the
PFF
right?
Board. It's like he's watching ESPN and taking the best available player on their board because it's like it's so wild. And hey, it's worked for them. Good for them. I'm not buying that they're this great drafting team because they've had misses too. Yeah, I don't know. Like everyone loves the Eagles. They're the darling. Good for them. Whatever.
No, as an Eagles fan myself, I'm quick to always mention, don't forget about the Jalen Reagor pick over Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I'll never let them forget that one. They can be Super Bowl contenders every year, and I'm still going to give them crap for that pick.
Every time he dances, a little part of me breaks.
The Scout with Clout here, he said, I really thought after Carr, Winston, Luton types that they'd go for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I thought they would go for Dorian Thompson-Robinson too. And it's like every time Jeff Ireland comes out and says, I want a dual threat quarterback, and then they do the exact opposite in the draft. And I'm just like, why are you lying? Well, either you're lying or you have no influence in this process, which I don't believe is true. So why is this the case?
Huge smoke screen. Yeah, I don't know either, but that took me back too, because I think he said that at the Senior Bowl, right?
Yes, he did. I don't think Dorian was there. I think that's why. Maybe if Dorian Thompson-Robinson was at the Senior Bowl, they might have drafted him. Jake Haener was there.
Hey, Saints fans, you do have the Senior Bowl MVP now.
Senior Bowl MVP, baby. And here's another one showed up late, but he's been active here. Miller is going to be an animal. I think he's a better running back than Williams. I don't know who he's talking about. Who's Williams? Oh, Jamal Williams. Okay.
Yeah.
I meant someone else in the draft. I mean,
different dudes. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's tough to compare a rookie with a guy who's been. I mean, Jamal Williams is a veteran who you trust right now, and so that's why I like having both of them in the room.
Who just broke a Lions record held by Barry Sanders? What?
Oh yeah, the touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, like just a guy you trust short yardage. I think, but they're very different runners.
Yeah,
right. Like I don't think that Jamal was ever the dynamic runner that you hope Kendre Miller can be. especially when you watch the tape and he just pops, you know it. But I like Jamal. I think Jamal's going to get the lion's share of the secondary work behind Kamara. And when Kamara's out, inevitably, he's going to be the starter. And then you're going to work Kendre in. But I like Kendre a lot. I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, and just with Williams, I think the player and the personality is a great fit for this team too.
So Austin, I always point out that the Saints took Boston Scott in the 6th round. I give him crap for it all the time because
they just let him go.
Yeah, like it's so annoying to me. They also took Daniel Lasco in the 7th round. And he stuck around for a few years, actually. He was on special teams for a little while. I think he had a nasty injury at one point. But yeah, no, and we've talked about the linebackers, Andrew Dowell, special teams guy, Nick Anderson. I think Nick Anderson and Andrew Dowell are very similar players. Andrew Dowell has always kind of been the undersized guy who just makes his presence known by being around the ball constantly and making you be like, oh, look at that. So yeah. Let's see. Any more questions? All right. I think that is it. So Austin wants to know about the UDFA guys we like. The entire second segment was kind of going in on the UDFA. So if you want to scrub back or listen to the podcast when it posts tomorrow, we go all in on it. Give you a bunch of info that I kind of culled together today. So take a look at that, Austin. I know you were late, but I'm not going to rehash it just because you're late, man.
Just do the rewind.
Yeah. Just go back. All right. Thanks, everyone, for being in here. As always, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to do a live chat. We haven't been able to do one of these for a little while. It's usually a time commitment thing. And last week with the draft, there was just no way we were putting out an episode on that Thursday. It was never going to happen. In my wildest dreams, I might have been like, oh, we'll do something. And then it was like, oh, all of a sudden I look up, it's 2 a.m.
No, the draft process and even going through the recap show the next day was a big blur.
Yeah, but I enjoyed that. I want to get Charlie on here more. I think he's a good voice to have. I think he does a really good job. I think he was really good in that episode. So I like this. Try to get him involved.
Best producer in the world.
He's busy this time every day because he's producing the show. And if you're listening to this and you can't get enough, go hang out with Bobby and Mike over on Sports Talk WWL. But all right, y'all. This was fun. As always, thanks everybody for listening. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until the next time, peace, y'all. Who dat?
Later, hoes.